The worst she can say is no. Lads, what was the worst that she ever said? Alright, so when I was like in 8th grade, we had a dance coming up, and I spent like an hour hyping myself up to ask this girl for a dance. I walked up to a group of the girls, and I asked her, and she just kneed me in the nuts. No words, just that. I never did figure out what the hell that was about. Next story. Alright, it was Halloween and I was at a bar. There were 2 girls who were clearly besties and they were very aware that they were the hottest girls at the bar. They were each wearing typical hot girl Halloween costumes. Think devil costume consisting of a red dress and plastic devil horns. I don't really remember what their exact costumes were, but I went up to one of them and said, "Hey, you look like a cute," whatever her costume was, and she responded with, "You look like an effing loser." And then they both laughed and walked away. I laugh now when I think about it, and the story always gets a rise when I tell it. But at that time, I felt like an effing loser. Next story. We were in high school and I sat next to her and we started talking. Everything was going great, so I checked to see if she wanted to go see a movie. She looked around and then said, "Look, I don't want to be mean, so just tell people we found out we were cousins." Then it was awkward for a few seconds until she switched seats. I can still smell the room we were in because of how bad that memory is burned in my brain. Ouch, Patricia. Not cool. Next story. This wasn't on her, but I still think about how awkward it was and how I wanted to die. The setup to this was I thought I had a secret admirer in my junior year of high school. I received a couple of notes from an unidentified girl, nothing over the top, but just enough to seem legit, saying she thought I was cute and asking if I had a girlfriend. Now, this was early 90s, so no social media, texting, etc. I would find out later this was all a prank devised by my friends, and I still can't believe I bought it. I can't remember the exact detail on how my friends discovered the identity of the girl, but they gave me the info one day, and I took it as real. I knew of this girl at school, but had never spoken to her before. I was walking to class with my buddies. We see this girl in the hallway take a turn and is heading away from us to class. My buddies get me on to go, "Ask her out, man. She wants to hang out with you, dude." And they get me pumped up enough to go chase her down in the hallway. I get to her and I say, "Hey there, Sarah, I got your notes and definitely would be interested in hanging out sometime with you." And the look of puzzle and confusion on her was so incredible, it immediately hit me that it was all a joke put on by my buddies. She says back to me, "I have no idea what notes you're talking about, and I have no idea who you are. And if you could not talk to me again, that would be great." And I still get hit with that random memory, and it hits me in the chest, just like it did then. Next story. She furiously said to me, "Don't ever smile at me again like that. You're ugly, and I do not fancy you." The kicker was, I saw her outside of school at a shop with one of her parents, and all I did was smile at her because, hey, there's someone I know from school. I was under no illusions that she had any interest in me, still emotionally devastated to the point where it makes me wince to remember 36 years later. Also to add, I saw her at the shop. Her little zinger occurred a day or so later at school. Next story. Nearly 19 years ago, and I remember it clearly. After 9 months together, we were on a bit of a break. I thought things were starting to pick up again. We go to lunch, I drop her at her house, and then she hits me with, "I didn't miss you as much as I thought I would," and ended it. That was a fun thing to hear and then have to go back to work. Next story. Pretty blonde girl used to always tease me in high school and let me play with her hair and stuff all the time. One day I finally bit up the courage to ask for her phone number in front of other classmates, and she loudly says my name and says, "No!" and then laughs out loud. A few other guys and girls laughed at me with her, and I still haven't recovered from that one. So I'm a girl, but when I was in 6th grade, I had a crush on an admittedly nerdy guy in a few classes of mine. I loved how smart he was and wasn't a flirt. One day, my mom comes to school and says we're leaving and never coming back, fleeing domestic violence, and I decided to just spill my guts. "Philip, I've had a big crush on you." And he looks at me and says, "Ew." I was absolutely mortified. Next story. I had this girlfriend who was crazy into one of the other guys in our friend group, but was really shy. One day she was feeling confident and started flirting with him. And he said, "You know, you're so weirdly attractive. Like, not in a conventional way, but I bet there's someone who's super into it." Here's the twist. He actually had a crush on her. He thought he was flirting back. Next story. The worst was when she said nothing. Told a friend I had feelings for her, and she refused to see me or talk to me for 3 days. That period of time was worse than any rejection I've ever had. Funnily enough, we had an amazing conversation when she was ready, where we both felt like we learned a lot by listening to each other. And it was the only time where a woman was ultimately willing to stay friends with me afterwards. As in, not just saying it and slowly fading me, but actually maintaining a genuine friendship. So it was a good ending, but my God, was I absolutely torn up for those 3 days. Next story. I unintentionally destroyed a boy once who asked me out in high school. He and I never really talked, but he sat in front of me in chemistry class. One day, he was stretching at his desk with his back arched over the back of his chair, and he looks over at me with his face upside down and says, with a goofy grin, "Will you go out with me?" I responded, "Are you joking?" Because I genuinely couldn't tell given how he delivered it. Turns out, though, he was not. He turned back around and never spoke to me again. Looking back, I probably came off as a horrible and mean person, like I was saying the thought of dating him was laughable, like it was a joke or something. And I think about it every now and again, and I feel terrible. I really wasn't trying to embarrass him. Okay, y'all, but did you notice how OP didn't say if she would date him or not? I don't know. Put your bets in. We don't have enough info. I want OP to say yeah, she probably would have, but part of me feels like she wouldn't, but only because she doesn't know the guy that well. In another timeline, they went out and they went 3 to 6 months and it ended. I don't think it would have lasted. I'm just not feeling it from the no information we have. My soul is telling me no. But you guys can disagree if you want. Anyway, next story. So, in high school track, a girl cornered me on the bus and tried to make me go through every girl between 10th and 12th grade of who I liked. I told her I didn't want to date anyone at our school, really, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. One sophomore on our team I told her didn't annoy me, mostly because she didn't talk much. When she did, it was sarcastic one-liners usually. So then this girl immediately went up to that sophomore and told her I was into her. I was about 50 feet away, but it was loud enough for me to hear what happened. The quiet sophomore practically screamed, "Oh my God, gross, no!" in front of everyone. Yeah, that's one that sticks with you. Next story. Not exactly what's being asked, but in the same ballpark. In high school, I asked a friend of mine out by asking if she wanted to see a particular movie with me. She said yes. We agreed to see it after school in a few days, and when I came to school the next day, she said she spoke to a few of our other friends and invited them to come too. I didn't muster the confidence to explain that I intended it as a date until we were already walking to the cinema with half a dozen of our friends. She said she didn't like me that way, and the walk was awkward as hell, but at least the movie was fun. Next story. I'm a girl. For context, I had feelings for my male best friend for years, so I finally confessed. He rejected me, basically saying that he couldn't imagine being in a relationship with me, and then he said that we should be friends with benefits. He also specified that if we would become FWBs, it would absolutely have to be a secret, and that I shouldn't tell anybody. 18-year-old virgin me was heartbroken by that, but was also stupid enough to accept being FWBs. Not my finest moment. Next story. I'm a woman and was only the witnessing bartender, but I still caught secondhand damage. I was working a Friday night shift covering at another bar in the chain I worked for and saw a guy spending about 20 minutes working up the courage to go up to a stereotypical, pretty, preppy girl and all of her friends. He looked like a nice enough lad, shy, a little nerdy, but looked well put together and decently handsome. I guess, I don't know, I'm into women. But he started with some opening greeting line that I didn't hear, and she interrupted him with an abrupt zip motion across the air and a curt, "What car do you drive?" And he stuttered out a suddenly off-balanced, Ford Fiesta. And then she had rolled her eyes and fully turned her back on him before he'd finished producing the S. And I felt bad for the guy and couldn't help but be a little terse to her thereafter. If you're not interested, that's more than fair enough, but there was no need for that level of callousness. Next story. She said to me, You're the ugliest MF I've seen all night." And I was outside a club having a cigarette. Another dude's huddled around me, also smoking. We start talking and a group of girls comes outside, also smoking, but a couple of steps away from us. One of the guys that was in our group said, "Everybody watch this," and walked to the group of girls. And all he did was say hi to a tall girl in a blue dress with a full face of makeup done, and she responds with that. We all start laughing and dude walks back to us with his head down. Kinda scared me, not gonna lie. I didn't ask a woman out directly for years after that. Next story. Lesbian here. She led me on for a year, kissed me when we first met, then proceeded to text and call me every day like we were in a relationship. Then, when I finally asked, "What are we?" she acted like I was insane and said we were just friends. Insisted she acts that way with all her friends. And I'm still recovering a year later. Next story. I was talking to a girl on New Year's Eve. It's 11:50 p.m. They're doing the countdown for the ball to drop. I'm standing against a wall, drink in one hand, the other hand around her waist, and she has her arms around my shoulders. I offhandedly mentioned I was broken up with recently by a woman, and her jaw dropped. removed her hands from my shoulders, and she said, "OMG, I thought you were gay, I'm so sorry," and then disappeared into the crowd. It's been 2 months, and I think I've thought about it every day since then. Next story. In high school, I didn't have a date for senior prom. A girl I knew said she knew a gal who really wanted to go. She was a junior, so had to be invited by a senior. When she was introduced to me, this girl said, "Oh wait, that's him? Never mind, I don't want to go that much." Yeah. Next story. She said, "I wouldn't date you if you were the last man alive." Mom to dad when he asked her out the first time. In fairness, dad was very drunk. Mom was not amused. Dad walked back to his equally drunk friends and told them he was going to marry that girl someday. And dad was right. Next story. Long story short, but really funny in retrospect. Liked a girl at church. This was around the age of 11, 12. I remembered a story my dad told me where he would send cute little notes to my mom through friends to let her know he liked her. So I started to do that with this girl. Passed her notes every so often. Unbeknownst to me, I had competition from one of the other guys in Sunday school. So he caught wind of my cute idea, forged a note in my handwriting, and completely sabotaged me. And whatever he wrote, it was enough to make this girl's father approach my parents. Showed them the note, and then they all had to sit down and have a chat with me about not being pursuant in such an aggressive and creepy manner. The girl's older sister also approached me a week or so later and told me to leave her sister alone, and that I wasn't allowed to talk with any of them anymore. Then the girl apologized and told me she hated my guts anyway. So thanks, Jared. Wherever the hell you are, sure was a good prank. Next story. I, F, at 14, confessed my feelings in a letter to another girl. She told her friends about it and told them I wanted to touch her boobs, which I had not written about. People laughed and a guy wrote on the chalkboard that I was a lesbian. Mind you, this was in the late 80s. I did touch someone else's boobs though the same year and it was great. Next story. I was 14 to 15-ish and set up a double movie date with 2 girls and my buddy. We planned it out and get the tickets online. Later on, she lets us know that the other girl's parents were not letting it happen and canceled. Bummer, but my buddy and I decided to go since we already bought the tickets. As we pull up to the front of the theater, sure enough, there they both are with 2 other guys. She noticed me and locked eyes. I just turned and left with my buddy. We ended up just walking to a nearby Applebee's, ate, and tipped the waiter the money that we had for the date. Not 100% sure, but I think she married that dude that she was with. Next story. Woman here. My friend set me up on a blind date. I went and everything went really well, so I figured I would ask him to the school dance a couple of weeks later. He went to a different school. I got the courage to ask him in a cute way and immediately got rejected. He gave me one reason, just told me that I needed to talk to my friend. Turns out, they had sex not even a week after she met up with him. She even cheated on her current boyfriend to do it. Some friend. It was humiliating. Next story. Not a guy, but a girl. When I was 15, I was a cadet. I had a crush on this guy, and Valentine's Day that year happened to fall on a parade night. So I got him a card and a chocolate bar. He blankly stared at me, took the card, and walked into the next room with the other officer cadets and belly laughed and hard for a good 5 minutes. He kept the chocolate bar too. Now, I was a very shy person when I was a teenager and didn't have the best home life, so that really messed with my self-esteem. Fortunately, I've fixed the damage and I don't have a problem with getting a date. But if I ever have the misfortune of bumping into that guy in adulthood, I would probably call him out for that one. Not because it would change anything or matter, but because I want to understand why it was so funny. Alright gang, so I read the comments and I understand that some of you may be frustrated that this theme was supposed to be, guys, what's your story? And so far half the stories have been, hey, woman here, let me share my story. To which I say, I understand, but it's not very uncommon for people not to follow the criteria, especially during the medical videos, for example, where we're like, doctors, nurses, what are your stories? And then someone starts with, not a doctor, not a nurse, but I have something crazy to tell. So yes, would I like to hear some stories of my fellow lads getting egg on their face in the proverbial sense? Sure, why not? But you know what? Women can be embarrassed too. And isn't that really the most unifying part about all of this? Love can traumatize anybody. Now that's beautiful. Anyway, next story. So, I was dating someone in college and I was head over heels for her. She was talented, quirky, beautiful. She drew comics for our college newspaper. I don't actually know how we ended up officially dating. I have a feeling we both got drunk one night and just agreed to it. But alas, we were dating for a while. The thing is, she was just not present. She never had time to hang out, never wanted to talk. She never really seemed to show any real interest in me or the relationship. We once went 4 days without talking. I asked her if she thought that was normal and she bluntly said yes. Anyway, being younger and dumber, I decided to try and double down fixing it rather than seeing the forest through the trees, so to speak. So I finally got her to hang out with me, and we decided to go get lunch at some Greek spot in Chicago. After a few pleasantries, I started to bring up all the things mentioned above, genuinely attempting to get an answer out of her for why it was like this. In my head, I had done something wrong, because why else would she have said yes to dating in the first place if she wasn't interested? After a little bit of prodding, I just kind of laid it all out there and waited for her to speak her mind. She simply looked at me and said, "Maybe you just like me more than I like you." So casually, as if she was telling a customer service worker what her usual order was. I was devastated, but ended up working up some modicum of self-worth and then just got up and left in the middle of the meal. Well, obviously, that didn't hurt because I'm not still thinking about it 13 years later. Next story. She went to the cops and told them I SA'd her at a party. I wasn't even aware that said party happened. It took 6 months of having my life torn upside down for a crime that didn't even happen for the cops to drop it. I would find out that this was a stunt she'd learned from her grandmother, who was from the Deep South and was used to eliminating problematic men from her life by whipping up a lynch mob. Next story. So, probably a good 30 years ago, I was out with 2 of my buddies, and we met up with a trio of girls. They immediately start talking to 2 of them, just kind of leaving me with this other girl. I go to chat with her, and she just holds up a finger and says, "No offense, but I'm tired of my girls running off with the 7 and the 8s and leaving me alone with the 4. Ouch. Next story. I rode the same bus as her. On Valentine's Day, I had my mom drive, and we got her a carnation bouquet in her favorite color and delivered it to her house so I could ask her out. She said no, and I was like, darn, okay, and moved on with my life. Then every recess for the rest of the month, her friends took it upon themselves individually to remind me that I was ugly and she hated my guts. I never hounded her or really even spoke to her again. It killed my social status and my confidence. I'm happily married with kids to different women, so I did recover. No is just the tip of the things she can say iceberg. Next story. Laughed nervously, then turned to anger, then to disgust and said, "Why would you ever think that a subhuman like you could get any girl, let alone me? It's good enough. We will let you be the funny guy here." And oh yeah, she screamed it so everyone around could hear it and texted everyone we knew to make sure the ones who were not there could get in on the fun with her. Next story. New middle school for 8th grade, and there's this really cute Asian girl in class whose name I'll never forget. One of my friends asks me if I think she's cute, and I say of course. About 2 minutes later, he taps my shoulder, and I see her reading a note that I didn't write. She laughs, looks at me, and gets uncomfortable, then throws it on the ground, at which point her friend kneels on her seat like a meerkat and interrupts class to say, "For the last time, she's not interested in you, and you're fat." Dude, brutal. Took me about 2 years in puberty to lose the weight, and I thought about it every time I was on the treadmill. Next story. I asked her out. We went out for a couple of days. I asked if I could kiss her. She said, okay. And then after that, I found out from a friend she went back to her cabin and started bawling, which caused me to start bawling because I thought I had done something awful to her. Then people were like, "What the hell did you do to her?" Then a teacher found me bawling and asked, "What's wrong?" and sat next to me while I continued to cry for another 5 minutes. I think I was 12 or 13. Next story. 5th grade. I overheard a girl talking to her friends about me. She wanted to leave me a note, but her friend said, "Ew, and really?" And they basically told her that they couldn't be friends with her if she did it. So she did not. It felt good knowing someone liked me, as I was very unpopular in an ignored kind of way. But now I knew that people actively disliked me for superficial reasons, which ultimately made me more closed off. Next story. I was an international student in NL. I went to visit a friend in Bruges, I don't know how to say it, Belgium, and we went out a night to a student bar. I go in, hang my jacket, and make eye contact with a couple of girls sitting on a table, maybe in my 20s. I politely smile and move along. As I'm walking towards the bar and pass next to them, one of the girls threw a glass of water in my face. I've never felt so little in my life, and I would love to know what motivated her to do so. Next story. She'd been hinting to our entire friend group for 2 months about how badly she wanted to be invited to a local spring society ball. I'd been friends with her for 10 years now. I didn't have a date and thought, hey, here's my chance. She mentioned again at a party one night, and I said, hey, Amanda, I would love to take you to the dance if you'd like to go. And she looked at me and said, what the actual F? No, and then walked off. That crushed me to the point that I didn't even go. Next story. I remember my first girlfriend in middle school, end of year 6th grade. Our school was being split into 2 districts, me and mine, hers and the new one. Last time we saw each other, she said, I love you. And I said, I know, and I walked to my bus. I was a kid. I didn't know what love was, nor how to respond to that. Next story. Not me, but a coworker. This gal was looking around in his department, so he asks if he can help her find anything. She chats him up for a few and asks him if he is he and calls him by his full name. And he said yeah and asked if she would like his number. And her reply was, "No, I just needed to verify it was you," as she served him his court papers. Next story. Girl here. In elementary school, I had a crush on a guy, and a friend somehow told him she wanted to only give a clue, but the clue was something pretty unique that everyone knew about me. And we were a small school, so everyone in the class was friends with basically everyone. Well, the guy told all the boys, and they waited for me at the school entrance, laughing and screaming my name when they saw me arrive. I was so ashamed. Fortunately, all of the girls of the class were on my side and comforted me. At the end, we decided to go to war against the boys to avenge me. The plan was to bring frying pans to beat them up, but obviously we never did it. We were so dramatic as children. Next story. I was about 5 years old and playing alone on the grass outside the flats where I lived. The sister of my friend was about 14 and was sat on her doorstep about 5 meters from me. "God, you're ugly," she said to me without even making any kind of eye contact with her. So that began my life of low self-esteem, even though both my ex-wife and my late wife told me I was good looking. I've carried that comment for almost 60 years. All right, y'all, so if y'all were on the Really Sparked channel, you know I said this all the time, but I haven't said this in a minute. This is why therapy's a thing. I am not negating that OP just had somebody say something awfully cruel in his formative years, but good Lord, this is why we go to therapy. 60 years! Holy, I want to swear. God. Or maybe some self-help books, because, I know we live in the United States and getting therapy isn't always easy. But this person said meters, so they're probably not even in the States. But 60 years! Oh my God. Anyway, next story. So I sat next to a girl in junior high homeroom. For some reason, the teacher asked me to give her an envelope when I saw her at her locker. I walked up and just handed it to her. She didn't want to take it and said something valley girlish along the lines of, "Oh God, no way." Ugh, gross. Next story. Not me, but my best friend at the time asked out another friend of ours back in senior year of high school. She made this entire spiel to him about how she doesn't date friends because it muddies relationships. Fast forward 2 weeks, and he went over to her house for a meetup, but she forgot about it. And he walked in on her actively having sex with another guy in our friend group. We're both 32 now, and he still hasn't ever had a girlfriend, let alone kissed a woman. That event really screwed up his self-confidence. There would have probably been much less damage if she was just honest with him about how she felt so he could move on like normal. Next story. I went on a date with a guy once. We went to dinner and then went to throwing. He said yes to coming back to my place and left soon after, turning me down for my advances. Then sent me a text message the next day saying that he had no desire to see me again and I was really only good for sex and not someone he'd want to take home to meet his parents. Like, dude, what the hell, damn. Next story. I had a group of friends who would dump me and pass me along to the next girl in the group. I didn't really care who I dated as long as I had a place to escape to. Rough childhood, so I was always accepted. They each dated me for a few weeks before ending it and saying, "But my friend wants to date you now." Oh, and actually thinking brought up the first girl I actually loved. She was awesome, and we dated for about 3 years, which is an entirety in teenage years. But I met another female friend at a baseball club, and she got jealous. So rather than handling that well, she started trying to make me jealous, kind of like getting me to realize how it hurt her by hurting me, I guess. The issue is that I wasn't insecure about our relationship, so I didn't really bite. She'd tell me about this dude in her swim class who apparently wanted her and how she tried to flirt with her, etc. But she was laying there in my arms, so I'd just tease her a bit about it and laugh it off. I knew she loved me, and I loved her, and I had nothing to worry about. Anyways, she escalated the stories she'd tell me, but I still didn't take her bait. So eventually one night, right after we had sex, she said, "Wow, that was great. At least this time I didn't think about him," saying his name, and my entire body just froze, while my mind tried to analyze what the hell just happened. I could literally feel every emotion of love just die. Not because I believed her to have ever thought of him during our sex, but because it was such a low blow to get a reaction from me. So I could feel the love wash off, but I refused to give her what she wanted, and just broke it off peacefully there and then. Sadly enough, she's the only ex I have that I've never been able to speak to ever again, mainly because she was extremely pissed off at me ever since we broke up. I met her years after that, and she was still seething with hatred towards me, but probably dodged a bullet though. So I don't often want to spam the commentaries, but this reminded me of something that I'd like to share with you from Dr. Arthur Brooks, who's kind of studies love and happiness in people. He's all over YouTube now, and he's from Harvard, and he was citing another study, and it was about cheating and jealousy. Pardon me, it was jealousy in men and women. And the number one form of jealousy that they found in men was the thought of their partner having sex with another person. And then for women, the number one form of jealousy for them was the thought of their partner saying, "I love you" to another person. So just hearing OP mention this, like that ultimate low blow, and saying, "I can never go back," just reminded me of that. But yeah, there's some lines you just don't cross, and hopefully you never have to cross them. And now you know. Science and psychology. Next story. So reading this sub has made me feel better about being a virgin until age 23. I was super shy and never built up the courage to ask a girl out throughout school. If any of these scenarios happened to me during my teen years, I don't think I ever would have mentally recovered. Proud to say I'm happily married to a wonderful woman for close to 10 years. So the wait was absolutely worth it. Next story. While not a rejection to my advances, the worst thing ever said to me was, "Don't talk about it, be about it," when I told my, at the time, wife that I was feeling wanting to take my own life. Over 30 years of battling depression, and that day was the only time I ever attempted to end my life. May 4th, 2017. The sting of those words still has not left me. Next story. Met a girl in my 10th grade science class. She was in the States from Bosnia via Germany. Beautiful, smart, and funny. I fell for her instantly. We talked and became friends because she was still dealing with the trauma of moving to her third country in 10 years, which was a lot. Then things started looking up. She was more interested in taking to me and kept saying that there was something she wanted to ask me. Then, on a Friday, she called me up after school as she walked to her after-school job, and the last thing she asked me was for a classmate's address, as she wanted to mail them something. This classmate was writing an article about her for the school newspaper, so I thought nothing of it. After we hung up, I was so excited thinking I was finally getting somewhere with her, and I would shoot my shot with her Monday morning at our lockers. They were very close together. I got there and waited a long time, but she didn't show up. Missing school was very unlike her, but hey, people get sick. So I went to class. Then about halfway through first period, our principal came over the loudspeaker to announce that a student had taken their life Friday night, walking home from their job. She said the name was my friend's, and I nearly fell into the floor. The day after her funeral, the family went to the school to get her stuff out of her locker, and they found the note, which specifically mentioned that there was a boy she liked that never liked her back, and that she was depressed because I was the only guy showing interest in her, and that she didn't see me like that, and that this is her life, and it wasn't going to get any better, and she was going to end it. That's been 25 years ago now, and it still hurts. Next story. I worked at Chipotle in college, and one of my coworkers' friends would occasionally come there to eat and hang out during my coworker's shift. And I would chat with this friend from time to time, especially if she was there when my shift was ending. She was very cute and we got along well. I told my coworker that I was interested in her friend, and so my coworker offered to mention me and gauge her interest. According to my coworker, her response was, "Ew, does he really think someone like me would be interested in him?" It wasn't a face-to-face rejection, and I never actually asked her out, but somehow it felt worse hearing it secondhand. 12 years later, and I still think about that. Next story. When I was in the 5th grade and had my friend Mario ask a girl if she would be my girlfriend, he came back excited, saying she had said yes. However, the next day she ignored me like nothing happened. I assumed he just lied to get me to stop bothering him about it, so I had my other friend, Steven, still friends to this day, ask her for me. And she replied, "Not even if he was the last person on Earth." Oh man, the crap you remember. Anyways, F you, Janet. I got me a baddie now. Next story. So I'm a girl, but in 8th grade, I was in PE, and we were taking turns playing basketball. And this guy who was pretty popular came up to me and asked me to the dance. His friends were standing behind him with dumb looks on their faces, and I knew right then and there it was all a joke, and he just wanted to embarrass me. I said, "No, thank you." And he actually got red in the face and turned around and said, "Well, F it. It didn't work." And I later found out he was going to say, "Ew, why would I ever go to a dance with someone like you?" if I said yes. But I'm glad I figured it out. That would have been horrible. Next story. The worst I ever said still haunts me. I had found out that the love of my life cheated on me for like 6 months. I was heartbroken. I hated everyone. Was at a friend's place and this guy came by, and I knew he was into me for a long time. He was very overweight and not at all attractive, and I knew he had low self-esteem. I was so upset, and he kept on saying stuff to me like, "I could take you out, etc." And eventually I lost it and yelled, "Not even if you were the last man on this effing earth." And I saw his eyes just die right there. Something literally just died. And I was like, what the hell did I just say? I didn't mean him specifically, just men, but it came out that way. And he never recovered. I was told he got depressed and just lost it. And I felt so bad. And then I found out he died a few years back. He had just gotten his crap together, lost all the weight, and then his heart just stopped. I still feel like crap. Next story. I was an absolute codependent, overly romantic teenage nightmare when I was in school, and I wrote a song about my ex and sang it in front of my whole year on the final day before breaking up from school. It was in front of about 400 people and made half of them cry. She knew the song was about her, and she stormed out shortly after I walked on the stage. Still kicked ass though with the performance, and one of the most cringe and yet most proudest moments of my life. Next story. She never spoke to me again. Didn't even say no. Just never spoke to me again. Backstory. I knew this girl my whole life. We were really good friends when we were little kids. Her brother and my brother always played soccer together, so they would have games. Me and her would run off and find stupid crap to do together. Innocent little kid crap. Always fun. As we grew up, we grew apart a little, just ran in different circles, but whenever we would see each other, we'd talk. She'd always steal my hoodies to wear too. When we got to late middle school / early high school years, AOL Instant Messenger was big. I was one of the last to not have it, and she says to me at school one day, "You need AIM." Dumbass me says, "I don't know why I'd want that." And she looks at me like I'm an idiot and says, "So I can talk to you." Anyway, after that, we'd make time every night to chat with each other. All my friends start telling me how she really likes me. She's told others in person and online that she likes me, all that jazz. I was nervous to ask her out because she was pretty popular and I was kinda nerdy. I could hang out with the popular kids, but kinda on the fringes. Anyway, one day, this older couple, I say older, they were seniors, who were really good friends with both of us, told me, "You have to ask her out. We'll take you two on a double date with us. It'll be perfect." Well, I built up the courage, pulled her aside in the hall between classes, and asked her if I could take her out on a date. And her jaw almost literally hit the floor. She stared at me for a few seconds, then turned and walked away. We lived in a small town, 1,400-ish people, less than 300 in our school. It's hard to avoid people. But for the rest of our high school years and through college until I moved out of town, she never had a conversation with me again. I'd say hi to her and she'd either say nothing or give me a quick hi back. She ended up shortly after that dating some guy from another school. A big party guy. I asked others if they knew what happened and why she acted like that, and honestly, nobody could figure it out. Next story. When I first started approaching girls in my teen years, my biggest fear was that they would say something crushing like, "Ew, no, you're ugly." Especially when I approached a girl who was with friends. I feared they might get embarrassed and insulted that some loser thought that they were in her league, like what happens in movies. But in reality, they either gave me their number, or if not, would say, "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." Whether it was true or not, that's basically the only rejection notice I received every time I was rejected. This is why I encourage other lads to stop fearing the TV, film rejection of being called an ugly loser, which doesn't really happen IRL, because women aren't usually sociopathic monsters bent on destroying your mental health. Next story. I've heard it a few times, but I've been out with a significant other and her friends, just having dinner and talking, and I swear, like clockwork, I say something that makes them all laugh, and one pipes up with, "Haha, I see why you're with him now." Definitely puts my looks in perspective. My first time was at 17 with my first girlfriend. Most recent was around 30 with my wife. Next story. I was told one time, "You're a nice guy, but I don't find anything about you physically or personality-wise attractive." The day after, I had taken her on a night out to a movie that she talked about wanting to see that she didn't have anyone to go with, and dinner at a small local cafe afterwards. No pretenses or anything, I had just asked her in DMs after if she had a good time, and didn't hear anything for like 3 days. Then the above was what she said to me after her friends made her come talk to me because they saw I was pretty distant and down the last few days. Next story. In middle school, I had a crush on this guy and was too shy to confess to him, so I wrote him a note with my own encoded language, with the key included, of course, I'm not a monster, and slipped it into his book bag. Not even 10 minutes later, he goes into his bag to get something and sees it. Out loud, he questions what it is, and immediately everyone in class is tuned in on this new mystery. One of my friends ends up helping him decode the thing entirely out loud while I sat there in the back of the classroom mortified. And I still remember the uncomfortable, kind of grossed out look he had in his eyes after lowering the paper and looking at me, and the people in class laughing. It still keeps me up at night sometimes, man. Next story. I know this is directed towards guys, but a lot of other girls commenting. So I was pretty well endowed in my chest area by high school, so had already endured a lot of crap from other girls who I guess were jealous. Anyway, my mom didn't let me wear makeup basically until I was 18, and she couldn't stop me. I guess I wasn't conventionally attractive and couldn't wear makeup, but since I had boobies, I was still turning some heads, and this gave me a confidence boost. There was a guy I liked in physics class, not really a stereotypical jock, but was on the cross-country team and was always nice to me. Later, I did realize a simple head nod in my direction acknowledged that I exist was a pretty low bar, but he was definitely still fairly popular. I remember that, but given my artificial confidence and the fact that it seemed he didn't have a boyfriend, I mustered up the courage to catch him in the hallway right after class and asked him out. Then, moments after I did that, two of his friends came up before he could even answer, and he just blurted out, "Never in a million years, but would you give your tits my number and tell them to call me?" And I just turned and speed walked away, mortified, hoping he didn't see me crying, and he and his friends were laughing hysterically at his witty response. The next day, it was getting around school that I'd apparently propositioned him for sex, which I think I'd have remembered doing, so I had guys I'd never even met before rejecting me for sex I'd never even asked for, as they passed me in the hallways. It took a long time for me to recover from that. I'm petite and was never overweight, not sure what guys had against me, but I went through the rest of high school and the beginning of college believing I was too ugly and worthless to date. Next story. Dated for about 6 months in high school. I was a distance runner and I ran 12 miles to her house while her parents were gone. She met me on the porch, told me she slept with someone else, asked me, "Well, did you really think it would last forever?" and then laughed. I had to run home while anger crying. We had looked at colleges together the weeks before. Next story. Once met a Dutch girl at a university bar I was flirting with a bit. She said if I could guess the capital of Holland, she'd keep flirting. There's technically two in a way, so I said both. Then she called me a skinny effing nerd and said something along the lines of, if I spent more time in the gym and less about learning geography, I could actually pick up girls at the bar. So, nothing like being asked a trick question, getting it right, and then getting ridiculed for it. Also, uncalled for, because I'm 6'3" and was 205 at the time. Worked for good mental gym motivation, though. Next story. Alright, little change up here. I was extremely shy in high school. Karen, yes, her real name, was the first person I ever asked out, and she said yes. The day of the supposed date, she called me up and canceled because she had a job interview on a Friday night at 7 p.m. Sure, Karen. Found out later she canceled because someone else, who was kind of a friend, had asked her out for the same night. They actually ended up getting married, and I did not see either of them again until our 10-year high school reunion. Her husband spent the time ogling and talking about all of the other women, ignoring his wife. LOL. Next story. So, she said yes. She flirted. She came over. She acted real weird. She acted distant and disinterested. And then I find out at like 4 a.m. that she was literally just hanging out with me to try and make my roommate jealous. Took years for me to trust that women were being genuine when they were being flirty. Next story. The first one, I was in 7th grade. I had a huge crush on this girl, and I guess it was obvious. During history class, she walked up to me with a big smile on her face. She had never talked to me before, so I was so shy. She looked me in the eye, still smiling, and said, "You're fugly," in a happy tone. I didn't know what that meant yet, and I said, "Thank you," and everyone laughed at me. The second time, I was in 10th grade, and I had a crush on some girl, and her friend came up to me during lunch to the table I was sitting at. She asked the table if I was sitting there, and I said, "Yeah, I'm here." She then said, "Oh, my friend thinks you're really cute and wants your number." And I asked her, "Really?" And she said in a super happy way, "No," then laughed and walked away. Oh boy. Next story. I had a great first date with a girl who I thought was a bit out of my league, but it went well, and we went on a second date that was decidedly worse. And she told me she was looking forward to going home to watch Law and Order with my roommate, and that last part was empathetically clear. I don't know that I've ever recovered. Next story. She had flirted with me in front of our entire friend group enough times for my female friends to start shouting at me, begging me to ask her out. Not to mention she introduced me to all of her siblings and straight up told me she likes me only for me, to tell her that I'll write a confession letter to whichever woman I end up falling for, only for her to say, "If I ever receive a letter from you, I'll throw up." Oh, and also she rejected me in front of everyone, saying she's not ready for a relationship, and a month later was posting snaps of being in love while holding some other guy's hand. Next story. Just out of high school. There was a girl that I thought I had some chemistry with. One day we drove to the mall, and before we got out of the car, I asked if I could kiss her. She said yes. She kissed me back. Within a few days, it got back to me that she was telling all of our friend group that I kissed her like it was some unwanted attack on her. I had to take a lot of teasing over it, and on the inside, it felt like the most humiliating thing ever. One of those moments you still occasionally think about decades later. Before that summer was over, she was openly trying to get with me. I didn't misread the signal or force myself on her in that embarrassing moment. She was just emotionally immature and chose to cut me off at the knees instead of dealing with whatever she was feeling. Next story. Didn't happen to me, but a friend of mine became really close friends with a girl in our friend group. They had a lot of common interests. Same leftist political worldview, same niche indie taste in music, same sense of humor, etc. She seemed to love hanging out with him, and they were always laughing together. But my friend was pretty overweight, not very attractive, and he had never asked out a girl before. But he did ask her out, and she said, "Ew, you're such a creep!" And then for the next week told everyone, including me, about how much of a creep he was for asking her out. He's still single 20 years later, and I can only assume this is a big part of why. Next story. I was unfortunately the she in this situation. It's senior year. One of my best friends was a junior. Loved this guy to death. Genuinely was one of my best friends. We're walking down the hallway outside of the gym, and I'm showing him my mom's graduating class photo. He looks at me and goes, "Hey, OP, I love you." And I don't even think to register it in a romantic sense. Literally would have never crossed my mind. And I responded with, "I love you too, man. You're like a little brother to me. I'm so grateful for you." And I felt awful. He clarifies he means he's in love with me. And my face dropped. And I gave some rambling about how much that meant to me, dropped statistics on how high school relationships never worked, and then promptly speed-walked to class. Not the first time I had mistaken someone's flirting/feelings for friendship, and not the last time either. Very uncomfortable for all parties involved, but man, it felt like I had just kicked a puppy. Next story. I will give this from the other side. When I was a young guy in school, a super hot girl, one I had been crushing on, asked me if I wanted to go out with her. For whatever reason, my idiot brain told me she was trying to make fun of me. So I immediately said, "No." And all of the people near us laughed at her. And I feel so terrible for that poor girl. I'm in my 40s, and not a year goes by where I don't think about how badly I misjudged that situation and unintentionally hurt that poor girl's feelings. Like, the feeling I have is not that I feel bad about missing an opportunity to date a hottie, but rather that I so callously hurt her feelings due to my own insecurity. It haunts me. Next story. This happened to one of my friends, and not me. I had no interest in dating in high school, but it was burned into my memory because I'd never seen anything like it. He had worked up the courage to ask out one of the most popular girls in our class, and when he asked for her number, she said, "Sorry, I don't have a phone," while she was scrolling/texting on a phone. I don't think he ever fully recovered from that. Next story. So I didn't even have an interest in this girl, but high school around mid-90s, I was not one of the cool kids and definitely not good looking. Still not, but I'm okay with it. Unprompted though, she comes up and says she wants to have my ugly babies, laughs, and goes back to her lunch table with the other girls in her group. I'm just kind of like, what the hell just happened? Bugged me after I processed it all. Still remember it well, but I had that last laugh though because she got fat. I already am, and was miserable in her life. I have a great family and a pretty damn cool job in life. F you, Amber. Next story. Girl told my friend she likes me. Told my friend she wanted to go to the dance with me. I asked her to the dance and she said yes. She spent the whole night though making me miserable and saying she didn't want to be there with me. At the dance, she told our mutual friend, "I hope OP doesn't try to kiss me tonight." Then, after the dance, instead of hanging out with our group of friends, she asked me to take her home so she could study for a test. Like, F you, Katie. If you didn't want to be there with me, you shouldn't have said explicitly that you wanted to go to the dance with me. Next story. I'll tell on myself here. I was the girl in question. In high school, there was a guy who had very obviously liked me all year. He brought me fudge, he gave me poems, Browning and Dickens poems mostly, but it was cute, and generally was very sweet to me. I wasn't particularly interested in him or anyone because I had a lot going on at home. So the last day of school, he finds me out in the garden and nervously confesses that he liked me this whole time. In retrospect, it probably was a big moment for him. He was red-faced and stammering, and I sighed and I said, I know. and he just looked at me. I added, helpfully, you weren't subtle, and he kind of stood there for a moment before, to his credit, saying, so, do you like me? And I told him, I'm not actually allowed to date, so it doesn't matter, which was true, but he seemed to think it was just a cop-out. He handled the whole situation with grace, and I hope he's found someone who truly appreciates his homemade fudge. Next story. Met a woman at a 10K road race, started talking and asked for her number. She declined and said, I'll tell you why. Oh great, here it comes. I didn't remember her, but she remembered me. She moved into an apartment my ex was moving out of, a day later than she was supposed to move out, so we crossed paths, and told me it was too freaky for her to date somebody who had been in her apartment before her. What are the odds that in a city of several million, I picked the one who moved into my ex's apartment? Next story. I was told, if I could just get your brain in another guy's body. This was in 2003, I was 21, and something about the tone. The words are kind of rough, but the tone was like she was frustrated, annoyed, and disgusted, if that makes sense. Made that stick with me for, well, I'm still recounting the story now, and I never asked another girl out. Thank goodness my lady and I met volunteering on a campaign about a decade later, and I hit it off, or I'd probably still be single. Next story. As a kid, laughed, then had a panic attack when it wasn't a joke. Sent her mate to tell me to never talk to her again. As an adult, spent a month talking to a girl from another country. She sent me a couple of selfies and was way out of my league, but was cool with me not returning any until I was comfortable. Said looks didn't matter. I warned her and just asked her, be gentle. When I finally sent one, I was dressed up for my mom's birthday, and she had a huge freak out. Angrily accused me of being an older guy lying about my age to prey on a younger woman, then called me mid-breakdown, sobbing because she realized looks mattered to her, and she wasn't the selfless paragon that she'd hyped herself up as. I felt bad, but it was so damn hard when her came to Jesus moment was seeing my face and feeling pure repulsion, and her knee-jerk reaction was to accuse me of being over a decade older than I am. Felt so effing hideous sitting in a curry house car park that I texted my mom and I walked home. Next story. She didn't say no. She said yes to go to the prom with me, let me get a limo, and even hung out with my friends just so she could use me as a chauffeur to get close to this other guy who was going to be at the prom with another girl. When I asked her why she did it and what the other guy had that I didn't, she said, and I'm quoting her, you're attractive and have money, but you're just not popular enough. So fellas, she can say and do worse than just saying no. Next story. Girl here. It was like 7th grade and I had moved to a new school. Found out before our first dance that there was a boy who liked me and whom I liked. I had to reject him though because my parents had recently separated and I was on a closely watched list or whatever it is called because my father was abusive. So I was worried my father would hurt me or the guy I had a crush on, so I rejected him in the middle of the dance floor. Went to the bathroom shaking and could never really look at him again. I felt crushed, but I'm sure he felt worse not knowing why I said no. Sorry, Joey. You deserved better. Next story. I've never been outright rejected at approach, to my recollection, but I'd been seeing a girl for a few weeks. We're at the bar playing pool. I'm catching feelings. I ask if she wants to be steady and exclusive. She kindly and sympathetically just smiled and said, no. She had driven, so I drunkenly walked 15 miles overnight back home. She insisted to drive me, but my ego couldn't take it. So I just smiled and said, I'm all right, and left. That one stung a little because we were getting really close. We were getting along really well. And she texted me once after that and we chatted about silly crap for a couple of minutes, then never spoke to her again. Next story. I was told, you were too serious about planning for your life and are too boring. I need someone who's willing to live more dangerously and explore more. Said woman in college, she later got knocked up by another man, a heroin addict who got her addicted to more drugs. Ditched her with a kid, and now her life is in pieces as a single mom in poverty. Some of her friends in social circles OD'd as well. Her mom said I was the one who got away and regrets her daughter not going with me. Meanwhile, I've been happily married for over 10 years, own a home, my wife and I have decent jobs, no drug addictions, healthy social circles. Karma works in mysterious ways. Next story. I saw this cute girl at the bar once and I sat down next to her and said, hey, can I buy you a drink? She looked at me and said, ew, no, you look like a Lifetime movie villain. And she got up and walked away. I was in complete shock and I still think about it to this day. Next story. Nothing. I was at a party just trying to mingle. I wasn't in full hit-on mode either. I was just trying to be friendly. I was standing in a circle of people and realized there was a woman behind me. I opened up, said something to the degree of welcoming her in, and she didn't even look at me straight in the face, rolled her eyes, and walked away with a disgusted air of, "Men are always hitting on me and it is exhausting." And that was more than 25 years ago, and it stays with me to this day. How dare I try to engage and therefore insult this obvious goddess of femininity? It was beyond dismissive. Barely spoke to another woman in social settings for years after that. Next story. Asked out a girl, she said no, and it seemed respectful. An hour later, I'm getting all these notifications, and it turns out she went on Facebook and made a post about how embarrassing it was I asked her out. Social media has destroyed our ability to feel for others. Hope the likes were worth it, Sarah. Next story. I sat next to a girl in health class, and we really hit it off. She always dressed nicely and had mentioned how her parents were strict, but I didn't really think anything of it. It actually took me a while to realize I was attracted to her, but I finally did, and I asked her out. She said she thought I was cute and smart and funny, but her parents wouldn't let her date someone like me because they wanted her to be with someone who was from a good family who could take care of her. I was totally confused because my parents were still together, they were religious, and my mom even worked at the school. All of us kids were honor classes, honor roll types, etc. So I told my buddy about this, and he just said, "She's rich, and to her you're a poor kid. Her parents are both important lawyers or something." And she really was nice about it, but the realization that there really were castes in America, that someone could take one look at me and say, "Nope, not good enough," hit me pretty hard. Next story. I'm sorry, guys. Young girls can be mean. I've been wanting to get this off my chest, and I'll never say it out loud, so I want to share it here. My 8-year-old asked a 10-year-old she plays sports with if she knew her brother, my son, who is also a 10-year-old at the same school. The girl said, "Yeah, I know him, but he's gross and ugly." Now, here's the thing. This little 10-year-old girl is the ugliest, goofiest looking thing I've ever seen. Now, I would have never said that out loud or thought twice about it until she said that about my son. So every time I see her now, I just want to tell her how goofy looking she is. The funny thing is, my son is actually handsome. He's just awkward. Just wanted to get that off my chest because it's not like I'll ever tell anyone this. Next story. Not me, but my buddy sat next to a pretty girl at a bar one time years back. She was sitting there having a drink by herself a couple of seats away, and he goes, "Hey," trying to strike up a conversation. She doesn't even look at him, just says, "Take your own life." And he replied, "Heard," finished his beer, and then closed out. Still makes me laugh to this day. Next story. 6th grade. I was the tallest in my class and painfully shy. There was a 6th grade dance coming up. I wasn't going to ask anyone. I wasn't popular and had very low self-esteem issues. Well, the tallest girl in the class said to me, since we are both the tallest, we should go to the dance together. Taken aback and really surprised, I just said, "Okay," and maybe smiled a little. Then, in the next breath, she says, "I was only kidding." Then she and her hanger-ons cackled and walked away. I knew from first-hand account that kids in general can be evil little craps, but this hurt. Fast forward to a year out of high school, the same tall girl was a very talented cellist and got a free ride on a scholarship. Well, 9 months after graduating from high school, I saw her in Sears pushing a baby carriage and in a housecoat and slippers. I caught her eye and smirked. She looked down and walked away. Karma sometimes takes a while. Next story. 2.5 years into a relationship, over a year of that long distance, I got a sense that she was not willing to discuss things going to the next level, aka engagement. When I pressed her on it, she finally just blurted out, "If you were a doctor, I would marry you." And it took a lot of time for me to really get over that. Sometimes I'm not sure I really totally am. Next story. This girl in the 4th grade was half native and half white, but based on her skin tone and look, most people thought she was a light-skinned mixed black girl, including me. I asked her out and told me she doesn't date black people. I was so confused about that for 4 years, but I found out she wasn't black, but it's still really odd. I'm assuming a 4th grader doesn't come to that conclusion on their own though, so I don't know what type of values her family was teaching her. Next story. I'm a girl. My prom was Sadie Hawkins, and I had the same best friend all 4 years of high school. We were always in the out crowd, but people assumed we were just too cool to be where they were. Which sounds cool, but really just means we spent most of our Fridays cruising and drinking milkshakes from the drive-thru. Now, knowing this is my last chance at a school dance and knowing I had a crush, I figured I'd ask him, and at least we could go as friends. So a couple of weeks ahead of time, I do the whole workup. You know the one, "Are you going?" "Well, I would if I had someone to go with," etc. He says he wants to go, but no one's asked, no one in mind. Cool. I take that as my green light and make a plan to ask him just as friends, but obviously definitely open to more if he wants to make a move. So I ask him, and he says yes. I'm excited and hopeful there might be more, but trying not to get ahead of myself because I don't want to embarrass myself or ruin our friendship over something I know reasonably will pass. Then, about an hour later, he calls me. I can tell I'm on speakerphone and I hear some whispering and muffled laughs of guys I can definitely identify. Then he says, "Hey, I just wanted to make sure. You only asked me as a friend, right?" Ouch. He and these guys who aren't even his friends are laughing at the idea that he might like me, as if that weren't painful enough, while I try to play it off, because again, I was happy just going as friends, though I could have spared the humiliation of him laughing at me. He continues, "Well, unless you were like DTF or something." Then the room he's calling from erupts with laughter. I told him no thanks, and he should just find another date. Next story. So, I don't think I've ever been told worse than no, but I have been on the other side of it a few times. The first was shortly after high school. I was the weird kid. I don't mean that I was the only weird kid, merely that in the hierarchy of odd kids, I was royalty. But like French royalty in December of 1793. About half a year after graduation, though, I ended up at a house party populated extensively by people that I knew from high school. Anyhow, being an expert weirdo, I noted that the fact that the house had a hot tub trumped the fact that I had no hot tub appropriate attire, and opted to climb in. I was eventually joined by two of my former classmates, neither of whom had been particularly pleasant to me. Alcohol and time being wonderful at smoothing away the importance of past oddities, eventually the two invited me into a threesome. Rather than responded, I opted to be drunkenly distracted and chose that time to see just how long I could hold my breath under the water of said hot tub. The answer was long enough that people dove in to rescue me and berated the horny couple for just sitting around letting someone drown. Then, a few years later, I was in the army and once again drinking, as one does when they make such colossally stupid decisions such as joining the army. Then the party was going well and the host spent the evening probably flirting with me. And I say probably because one of them had a whole collection of bottle caps, each with single words written on them, which she kept using to write out sentences such as "press her arm saddle," while the others kept insisting on cramming herself right next to me whenever I chose to sit. Eventually, everything wound down and the three of us were the only ones left, when one of them excused herself for the bathroom while the other kept writing thirsty messages using her stack of bottle caps, which had grown considerably over the course of the evening. Then the other one came back wearing a skimpy Catholic schoolgirl outfit, cat ears, a cattail, and suggested that we could all go watch a movie together. Having exhausted the alcohol, I said sure, but indicated that I'd go get my own personal stash of Woodchuck 802 from my room in return. I, of course, stopped to pee along the way, and as I did, I pieced through the evidence, kept pondering it as I retrieved the cider, and opened one for myself, and then sipped while continuing to grind away at the facts when I determined that I was, in fact, far too drunk to navigate whatever was happening with my evening, and so finished my cider, drank a giant cup of water, and passed out fully dressed instead. Next story. Girl here. I was 14. I made a Valentine's card for my crush. At lunch break in front of about 15 to 20 people, he came over, thanked me, and read a poem to me he wrote. It ripped me to pieces, then handed it to me with the card ripped in half. School was not kind to me. Next story. I wrote a poem for her and handed it to her after class. I also made it clear in a small note if she wasn't interested, that's fine, no need to reply. Well, she invited me to have lunch with her, so I was stoked. I went where she told me, but then she had some guy she knew come tell me I was making her uncomfortable and to stay away. The guy was like 5'2" and quivering in his voice. I'm 6'2", so he was looking up at me while doing this, and I told him not to worry and went on my way. Half because at this point I was no longer interested, and half because I felt awful for this guy. Like, why bother with all of that? Just to hurt me and make that poor dude uncomfortable as hell in the process? Looking back, I know I dodged a bullet, but what the hell? Okay, so with two poem stories back to back, for 1 second I thought these were the same people, and I bet that the 5'2" guy had a crush on the girl. Now, I will say, as for relevant personal stories, I don't really have anything to share in that regard. I just don't go on dates a lot. I wish I did. I've dated, I wish I went on more. I deleted the apps earlier this year. I'm going to a speed dating thing this week, though, or next week, though, so we'll have to see how that's going. But I will share one story. So when I worked in customer service, there was this one regular. She was a baddie, man. And maybe I've shared this on this channel, but she would IF me. I can't say the full word, but you know what I mean when I mean F. Okay, like up and down, looking all over, smiling. I know that guys are like bad at reading cues, but y'all, you know what it takes for a guy to be 100% positive, fellas? Like, that's how positive I was. You don't look at someone like that and be friendly. So eventually one day, I worked up the courage to give her my phone number because I read somewhere that if you can give a woman your phone number, it takes the pressure off of her of asking for her number and puts her in a position of power because she can text you whenever she wants. So I was like, hey, can I give you my number? And she's like, oh, okay. Never texted me. And you know what happened? The next time I saw her, she did her eye-oogling thing again. And I'm like, what do you want from me? You look at me up and down and seduce me with your eyes and you won't even text me? We're done. We never even started. But people are weird sometimes and confusing. And, you know, as we've learned from this video, men and women can just be awful in their younger years, can't they? But anyway, guys, we're at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting, and have a good one.